Hello. Welcome to Kindred Skulls. My name is Gregg Blake. I am one of the hosts of this fabulous podcast. I am joined this evening with my co-hosts, Mr. Nick Olson. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Welcome back to the show. We did a live stream without you this Sunday. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let me first introduce my other co-host, Mr. Matt Priest.
How's it going, Greg?
I'm all right.
Feeling rejuvenated after the bye week. Didn't have to stress out about Vikings football for 3 hours on Sunday, so I'm emotionally ready for Sunday night now.
Didn't have any Vikings film to grind. Watch every player for 60 plays or something.
Okay, I have two questions. Number one, what did you guys do with your bye week? Did you do anything out of the ordinary with it? With your Sunday afternoon?
I watched Red Zone all day, so
read a book and hung out with my kids. I'm pretty boring, I guess.
It's not boring. I definitely watched Red Zone, Matt, for sure. And then in the afternoon, on a whim, I was like, you know what? Like, I love a good Sunday afternoon movie. I haven't done that in a while, so I watched two movies back to back. I watched Children of the Corn, which was my first watch of Children of the Corn. Have you guys ever seen this
Halloweeny?
I have not, but that's very thematic. Yeah,
I don't do horror movies. I'm sorry.
Okay, interesting. I'm a big horror
I don't enjoy being scared. To me, it's like torture. It's like, why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Each their own.
I find it exhilarating, in a certain way. But I watched Children of the Corn it's a little. I think it's a little overrated, and I'm teasing something that we're going to be doing this evening, actually, a little bit by saying that. A little overrated, Children of the Corn. It's like this classic movie everybody talks about, and I was watching it. I'm like, this is a mess. Like, I don't know why this is. I mean, it's fun, but anyway, overrated, underrated. These are all phrases we like to use when we're talking about a variety of different topics, including bye week awards, which is what we're doing this week, boys. Bye week awards. Are we excited?
Yeah, I'm excited. I like to hash it up, kind of look at the overall picture of the team where we're at right now. So
excellent. This is the first annual, we'll see. First iteration of bye week awards here at Kindred Skulls. We didn't have any Vikings to watch, so this week we're just going to talk about some of our best offensive player award, best defensive player award, a couple of other little surprise topics coming up here. It might be a little truncated pod, but we'll go with it. We'll see how it goes. So let me properly introduce this here. And what's going to happen, guys, is I'm going to drop some music, okay? So I'm going to intro the bye week awards, and I'm going to drop some music. You don't know what I'm going to drop, though. So here's the deal. I'm going to introduce it, and then everybody pretend you're listening to the music, all right? We're going to do about 5 seconds. Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the first iteration of the 2021 bye week awards here at Kindred Skulls. I don't know if that bit's going to land for the listeners. Our listeners are going to be like, what the hell is going on? All right, let's get right into it, guys. Let's go with our first award of the first half of the season, essentially. Who is our best offensive player? And Matt, let's start with you. Who would you put as your best offensive player from the Minnesota Vikings so far in 2021?
All right. I think we have a few names to consider here. And I gave consideration to guys like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Dalvin Cook was kind of a bit too hurt, but I think the answer is pretty clearly Kirk Cousins, which is kind of weird to say for the Vikings team. If it was MVP, obviously quarterback rules, right? So Kirk's the answer for MVP. But from an offensive player's perspective, I think he's been our most consistent, and he's really been our best player on offense. Now, a lot of what the Vikings have done this year is switch to more quick game stuff. right? And he's been really efficient getting out of that, getting his reads and getting the ball out. The Panthers game, especially, you saw him help out the offensive line quite a bit with doing that. And I think that's a big part of the reason I don't think we've taken all that many sacks on offense this year, and our pressure rates have generally been lower. He's also led, 4 comeback drives. If I counted out, we came back to tie the Bengals game. That's close enough to a comeback drive. We should have won the Cardinals game. We didn't do it against the Browns, but we did do it each of the last 2 weeks in the Lions and the Panthers games. Yep. So really, I think he's put it all together. I think the numbers are there as well. I don't know exactly where he is statistically, but he's at least fringe top 10 in that area. And I think he's been the best player on the offense for the Vikings.
Yeah. Nick, do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally agree. I won't belabor the point, but I mean, he's just playing mistake-free football. There isn't a quarterback in the NFL with fewer mistakes right now. It's not the sexiest type of play. It's not a lot of like big highlight, big time throws, crazy roll out of the pocket. It's just a lot of quick, get the job done. The only quarterback right now starting who's played more than half of the snaps with a higher grade than him right now is Tom Brady. Same kind of quarterback, not necessarily a lot of flash, not a lot of athleticism. It's a lot of dinking and dunking a lot in Tom Brady's career, but it's just kind of like perfect mistake-free football. So weird to say on a team with a lot of sort of skill talent, but Kirk's the guy right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you both. And it's one of those things like a lot like MVP where when you talk about best offensive player, it's very hard not to land on the quarterback because of everything they do and how badly you can play without them. But I think that we have a team that's very strangely built, and we do have like really high level players at a number of positions on offense. I mean, obviously the big three, Dalvin, Adam, and JJ, you guys both mentioned those guys, but they haven't been very consistent this year. Like they've been 1 week, JJ will be on fire. Next week it'll be Adam, and Dalvin's been up and down. So I think it really does behoove us to put Kirk on that best offensive player award here for at the bye week. Totally appropriate. Well chosen, guys. All right, let's talk about the next topic. Best defensive player. Who is the best defense? Now, this one may be a little bit more, we'll see here. I'm curious to see what you guys say. Nick, let's start with you this time. Who is your best defensive player so far this year?
I'm going to lawyer this, and I'm going to come at it at a few different angles. But when I watch the Vikings tape and I look at the traits that each player has and what they're doing on the field, I think Danielle Hunter is clearly in a tier of his own compared to everybody else on the field. That said, if we're asking about who has performed the best, not just who do I think will continue to perform the best, but who has done their job the best, who's been asked a lot of and has done their job the best, I think it's got to be Eric Kendricks. He makes so many incredible plays in the run fits and sussing things out immediately. That one-handed interception he had a couple weeks back made a lot of like really high-level plays and covers, doesn't get exposed on play action like he used to. Just made a lot of really smart plays. He's a really good player, a lot of stops. So Hunter, I think, probably took a couple games before you said like, oh yeah, this guy's back. He's back to where he was. This is the old Danielle. And since then he's been on a tear and, had, crazy amount of sacks, production pressures. Has been really great in the run game too. So I understand the argument for Hunter, but for me personally, just based on what he's done, I think Kendricks has a narrow edge.
Yeah, I think it's a really close race between those two. I guess at this point, I would say I would lean Hunter, which is a little bit of a disagreement there. For Kendricks, you talked about Hunter having a couple of missteps, maybe the first couple of games, especially the Bengals game. He wasn't in full form. Kendricks missed a handful of tackles the first 2 games, which is uncharacteristic of him as well. So I think both the first 2 games, maybe there was a little bit of rust, but because Kendricks was coming off an injury later last season as well. Right. Obviously not the level of severity that Hunter had, but, a little bit of rust early on. They're both performing at a really high level. Hunter just does some things that are like impossible. Like they're mind melting when you see him. And that gets me a little bit more excited. So I love it. I love both of them though.
So we have a competition here between Spider-Man and the Alien, essentially.
Yeah,
what you're telling me. And I'll be the deciding vote here for the official stance of Kindred Skulls. I'm going to have to go with Eric Kendricks myself. No disrespect, Matt, but I think, I'm going to consider last year as well as part of my motivation for this, because last year he was the only guy who survived our injury wave. He's the only guy who was doing anything on defense, contributing in any meaningful way for an entire miserable season, and did not skip a beat this year. And again, had to cover for injury at the linebacker position. As our defensive group started to gel, he was the only guy really making plays. I would not want to watch the Minnesota Vikings right now without Eric Kendricks. I think he's just made a huge impact. I believe he wears the dot for us when Barr's.
No, it was actually Vigil wearing the dot.
What's it, Vigil? Really? Vigil?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I think they just let Kendricks do more of his thing and because Kendricks helps communicate and that sort of thing, but it's just an organizational thing.
Yeah. Well, regardless, I just think he just plays such a huge role for this team, emotionally, as well as what he does on the field. So I'm giving it to Kendricks, and that means he's getting it.
I'll also just say this. I'll close with this. I think there are a lot of really good edge rushers in the NFL right now.
Yep.
I really like Hunter. I don't know. I wouldn't argue with somebody. Put it this way: I wouldn't argue with somebody if they took one of the Bosa brothers, T.J. Watt. If they took Chandler Jones right now, if they took Myles Garrett. There's like a lot of really good edge rushers right now. I think it's pretty hard to argue against Kendricks being one of the top 3 linebackers in football right now. I just think Kendricks, with the way he's played this year and with his pedigree, I think is in. There's a better argument for Kendricks, I think, as an All-Pro right now than Danielle Hunter. I'll put it that way.
Matt loves Spider-Man, so this is probably.
I forget. I can't argue against the Eric Kendricks love. He is awesome. I've been clamoring him for to be like the best linebacker in the league for 3 years now, since 2019, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So no, I'm totally on board with it. But I think they're both worthy consideration in there.
Absolutely. We survived our first disagreement here on bi-week awards. I wasn't sure if we were going to have any, so this is great. Let's move right along. Let's talk about, and I think this one's going to be quick. Let's talk about most improved player. Okay, the person that was on the team last year, underperformed, and this year is exceeding our expectations for that person. I think, Matt, let's start with you. Who's your most improved player?
All right. So the answer is KJ Osborne, but I'll let Nick handle KJ Osborne. I'm making an assumption, Nick. I apologize if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Because somebody that popped in my brain and I want to talk about a little bit is Tyler Conklin, who I think has done a really good job stepping in and becoming the starting tight end.
That's a good one. I like that.
He's got 260 receiving yards. That's obviously more than he had the previous season. Nick, you a little bit before the season showed some of his faults and kind of how we were a little bit concerned with him being a starter initially. I think he's vastly improved as a blocker this year. He does have some high profile losses on reps. There was the one against Myles Garrett. We talk about Danielle Hunter being a freak. Like, Myles Garrett is freakier than Danielle Hunter is. Like, he might be the only guy who is, but he is. So I don't really count that against him. I think his blocking has been really critical, and his development in that area has been critical to our offense staying on track. We at least have had serviceable tight end play. I think, like I said at the beginning, I think KJ Osborne is the real answer here, but I wanted to throw his name out there because we haven't talked about him that much on this podcast, and I think he deserved a little love there.
Well said. Nick, talk to us about KJ Osborne. And we've talked about him on the show already, but lay it on us. I'm assuming he's your most improved player. Is that?
No, yeah, signed, sealed, delivered. I mean, this guy was somebody who we didn't even expect to make the roster at the beginning of August. Like, he was kind of a no-show as a rookie, a late-round rookie. We just kind of assumed D.D. Westbrook was the guy now, or somebody else was coming along. And no, KJ Osborne came along, and not only did he win the wide receivers 3 spot in camp, he came along and was an impact player right away. He's been converting 3rd downs, 4th downs. He's been critical in late game situations. He's been a big part of all these game-winning drives that Cousins has led or Cousins has set up for what should have been game-winning drives. Osborne's been a huge part of it. And it's not just like the third down conversions. He's kind of Mr. Third Down, but he's also like Mr. Touchdown. He had the game-winning touchdown against Carolina. He had the opening touchdown, like 60-yard touchdown pass against the Cardinals. So in both clutch moments and big plays, he's really come along. He's already, I've said this before, but he's already the most productive wide receiver 3 the Vikings have had in the last 5 years. And this is a guy who we didn't expect to make the forget wide receiver 3. We didn't think it was wide receiver 7. So
it's you can't undersell just how much we wrote this guy off. I mean, he was like a joke last year. Like not like, I'm not trying to be mean, but like we would laugh about what a waste of a pick and just absolute zero expectations for him to be not just contributing at all, but to be an increasingly valuable member of the team is incredible. It's very much like Adam Thielen's rise, just very sharp, very unexpected.
Yeah, like I did a preseason roster projection just kind of for myself, like over minicamp or something. And I guess this guy did make the roster eventually, but I had him cut and kept Dan Chisena over him, right? And it's
to give you an idea, is Dan Chisena even on a team at this point?
Yes, he is, because he put him on IR and now he's special teams, which it was because of that special teams capability. But I expected absolutely nothing from Osborne as a receiver because we haven't seen anything. So no, I think it's been awesome, the transformation he's had.
Absolutely. Go KJ, keep it up. All right, and keep working on that sneer, man. I gotta see that sneer again. All right, let's do we're going to get a little funky here. And this one is almost certain to give us a little bit of disagreement, I think. Let's talk about, and maybe not, we'll see. Let's talk about the best position group on the Minnesota Vikings. I'm shooting from the hip a little right now. I actually have had a hard time picking one. So, Nick, let's start with you. What is your best position group on the Minnesota Vikings this year?
There's a lot of different ways you can go with this one, so I wouldn't be surprised if Matt disagrees. But the one I think makes the most sense would be the defensive tackles. I think Michael Pierce came in here and was incredible right out of the gate. Like was able to withstand double teams like nothing. Popped off as a pass rusher as well. Had a couple sacks as a nose guard, something we weren't expecting to see from him, and was just a complete wrecking ball in the run game. And then Dalvin Tomlinson has also come along really strongly lately. Has been having some really impressive pass rush moves as well. Also incredibly stout against the run, both whether he's sustaining blocks or whether he's chasing down stretch runs, both been really, really good. But then we've also seen like Armon Watts is like the 6th highest rated defensive tackle in the NFL, based largely on how good of a pass rusher he's been in some sub packages from like the one tech spot. But we've also seen like James Lynch come in and be really impressive. And I think Sheldon Richardson, we don't talk about him a lot, but Sheldon Richardson has been like a really key part of like the pressure packages they bring on third down. And he's been good in that role too. So I would have a hard time imagining an NFL team with a better top to bottom defensive tackle depth room than the Minnesota Vikings. Right? I think, there are Aaron Donalds of the world. There are better single player, Javon Hargrave is really broken out. Vita Vea, they're like, I'm not sure like Pierce or Tomlinson themselves are on that level, but like just the top to bottom like depth here is insane. Like they've got probably 5 deep guys who I think could start or at least make really meaningful rotational contributions, as we've seen from Watts and Lynch recently. So I have to go with them, despite the fact that I think you can make a good case for the wide receivers, the linebackers, a few other groups.
Nick dropping bombs here. Dropping bombs. All right, Matt.
No, I want to say I think defensive tackles is a really good answer. I think, especially when you compare it to last year, it's just a night and day difference in terms of the level of play. Where like
Shamar Stephen was our highest rated defensive tackle last year. Defensive lineman.
He was right off of. I mean, right out of my mouth.
If you're using last year as a litmus test, it's every group's going to come out shining.
I do want to shout out our wide receivers, right? Because I think if you look at the overall quality of the wide receivers, and we alluded to it a little bit earlier, they have had inconsistencies. Adam Thielen kind of disappeared for 3 games. Like he had the 2 touchdowns in both of the first 2 games, and then he kind of disappeared a little bit in the middle, and then had a great game against the Panthers. Justin Jefferson has had drop issues. He's had a fumble or 2. But at the end of the day, they've played at a really high level. Particularly Jefferson has played at a really high level the entire season, even with a couple of the issues. It's kind of like the Diggs 2019 level of play where he's killing it, except for a couple of notable things that stick in your mind, right? Thielen has still been a really high level. He's still an elite red zone producer. That's awesome to see. And we just talked about how great KJ Osborne has been. Like the Vikings can line up 3 wide at wide receiver against almost anybody in the league, I think. And it's really been nice to see.
They can go 4 wide too. Like obviously Osborne is like really impressive, but like they've designed plays for D.D. Westbrook too. And he's come in clutch, I think, on 3rd downs too when they go for 1. So
the Minnesota Vikings have finally entered the modern age. We can put 4 receivers on the field at the same time.
This was a team that was running like 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers on the field, like dead last in the NFL. Yeah. And now we're coming out and we're running like 10 personnel. It's like a crazy change.
Like CJ Ham, Tyler Conklin, Irv Smith, those guys last year got more snaps than our 3rd highest snap wide receiver.
Yeah.
And this year we're running 11 personnel at like a normal rate.
I'm actually struggling to even remember who our 3rd receiver was. That's how.
That BB, man. How could you forget?
It was BB and it was
BB. It was like BB, of course.
We like split time with BB and BC Johnson, right? Who
BB the BB.
Yep.
No, those are both really good answers, you guys. But this is going to have to be a split award, and I'm actually going to go a little bit wild card here myself. I'm going to go with the running back group, and here's my reasoning. Okay, you guys are right. I think the defensive tackle group the defensive line group has been huge for us. Defensive tackle group. I think that obviously our receiver room is extremely talented, and we've already handed the award to Kirk for best offensive player, right? So why is Gregg talking about the running backs? I think that we are still a running team at our core. That's still what we want to do. We want to establish the run. We want to control clock. And we want to work everything off play action. So that is still a core value of what this team does. And the fact that we have had injury trouble, with our starting running back, and we've had to use Alexander Madison, and it's worked. It's been pretty. The rushing totals are pretty high for in the NFL these days. We've got 100-yard rushers almost every week. We're running the ball, a number of times, and we're able to keep our offense ticking, despite having to deal with injuries and things like that. So I'm going to give it to that group, not because of the numbers necessarily, or just because it's such a big piece of what we do, and they have kept us going. And that's going to be my choice. So split award on that one. Very interesting, but good answers all around, I think.
So who has the 2nd longest run on the Vikings so far this year?
It's Kirk.
No, it's not.
Who is it?
CJ Ham. Let's go.
Yeah, that's right. Explosive the big gainer. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
Part of the running back room, man. Come on, Gregg.
Absolutely he is. I mean, those. Hey, don't. Fullbacks still make an impact in the NFL, man, on like 5 teams. All right, let's move on. I think that was a really good one. Let's talk about. Okay, we're gonna get a little negative here. We don't do that much on this show, and I like that we don't, but let's do it. Let's go negative. Let's talk about the most overrated player on the Minnesota Vikings currently. And I think I have a doozy of an answer, but let's go with you, Matt, this time. Who's your most overrated Minnesota Viking?
This is going to be a little bit fun because I'm going to kind of oppose what Gregg was just talking about with the strength of the running back room. And I think the most overrated player on the Vikings so far this year has been Alex Madison. And I think really his performances, and that's not to say I don't think Madison is a good player, but I think the stats he has put up in his performances belie kind of how he has played behind that. I think if you look at the games, like he's just not making good decisions a lot of times with the ball. He's trying to bounce the ball too much, go outside. There was the notable play, obviously, where he fumbled against the Lions, right? And the game overall still looks good. Like we don't track fumbles for running backs and stuff like that. Like we pay attention to interceptions for quarterbacks, or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where when we see interceptions for quarterbacks, we're like, whoa, but we don't even think about that. Even on the quarterback side, we don't think about fumbles that way.
Right.
But when a running back fumbles in a critical situation and he's just not making good decisions to help us keep the chains moving, which he has had issues with a couple times this season, even in the Seahawks game, he's put up good numbers, but I don't think his play has reached that level.
Wow.
And that's not me saying he's bad. I think he's still a good backup to have. I don't want him off the team, but I think his numbers have been a bit overrated.
Matt just stabbed me in the back right after my my position group choice. Nick, who's your most overrated Minnesota Viking?
So Madison's a good answer. I think of overrated in terms of who is somebody that fans or people generally think is a good player, who's maybe gassed up a little bit, or people put in the elite tier, but maybe he's only like solid or good.
Sure.
And I think the guy who best matches that description right now, because like nobody's saying Nick Vigil is good. Nobody's saying like DJ Wanham has made it yet. I'd say the guy who best fits that description right now is Brian O'Neill. I think people are a little quick to put him in the elite category. He has improved substantially, especially compared to his rookie year, but even compared to last year, he's got a better anchor. He's really stout. I think
do people really put him in the elite though? Is that something that I'm not familiar with? I mean, I think we're happy that we have some consistency.
I think where I've seen O'Neill get overrated is I see people like for a while there was a lot of tweets making the circles saying like O'Neill has given up the fewest pressures of any tackle in the NFL.
Sure.
Which is, people take that and think, wow, he must be the best pass protector in the NFL. But really it is. Kirk is, one of the fastest quarterbacks at getting rid of the ball really fast. And they've designed their whole offense to protect the offensive line.
Right.
But just because like they need to protect Rashad Hill and Garrett Bradbury in pass protection doesn't mean that like Brian O'Neill is really good. He is good. But he's still, we saw it against the Panthers. He gave up some pretty immediate pressures a few times. There's been a lot of losses he's had that kind of don't get counted in the stat sheet because Kirk's getting rid of the ball really fast, or because of just the way the play is drawn up, or because somebody else gave pressure and got to Cousins first. So I think O'Neill's been really good, particularly in the run game. I mean, he's like an all-around very solid guy. And I don't bemoan the Vikings paying him big money this year, but I don't think he's quite a Pro Bowl caliber player. And there's still some room, I think, for him to grow and improve it.
Okay. That's very fair. I definitely, I found it interesting that you mentioned specifically how you think of it as, that he's in this tier, but he's actually maybe down here kind of deal as what you think of as someone being overrated. I'm going to be honest with you. And I love the guy. He's one of my favorite players.
I think I know who you're talking about. I figured this out a couple minutes ago.
I love him. Like, I just want to lead this with like, he's one of the heart and soul pieces of this team. I'm not rooting for his demise, nothing like that. But I don't think Harrison Smith is an elite player anymore. I'm just putting it out there. I think that we gave him all that money, and I think it was the right move. I think he's still a very great, he's a great safety. But when you think about when I think back in my memory about Harrison Smith, I think about impact plays. Big interceptions, running back for touchdowns, huge slobber knocking hits, a terror on the football field. And that's the guy that I remember. And that's the guy that I still think of him as. But I'm not sure that the results are really quite there anymore. And I don't know if it's stuff we're asking him to do because the guys around him aren't as good as they once were. So he's not able to get up on the line as much. I'm sure there are reasonable things to say in his defense. And I'm happy to be wrong on this. But I just haven't. On this show, I don't think we have spoken about Harrison Smith once this year. I honestly don't think we have.
I don't think we have. And I think that's a pretty good point because he tends to make those impact plays, or he has in that past, and you have not seen that jump off the screen at you immediately. Right. I don't think he's been terrible and like out of position or not where he needs to be as a safety. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all, Nick.
I think he's been really good, and I just think the splash plays haven't come. He is currently Pro Football Focus's 6th highest graded safety in the league. And I think right now you can still make the argument that he is the best safety in the league because, like Jaron Kearse, like maybe one of the higher rated guys, like Kevin Byard, I don't know, or Byard. I'm not sure you would rank Marcus Williams, maybe. But these guys, I'm not sure you would say are clearly a tier above Harrison Smith. I do think there are times when you can see he's no longer the same athlete he was. I think when the Cardinals,
I think
Kyler
that's
Murray
more what
had that rushing touchdown from empty, and you saw him a little late on the angle. You see the decline in athleticism. But despite the splash plays, he hasn't given up a touchdown yet in coverage. He's only given up 4 catches in coverage. He's had 2 pass breakups. He hasn't had any sacks or anything, but he's been effective as a blitzer. And he's only had 1 missed tackle, which is like tied for second lowest.
Let me elaborate, okay? Because you're making
mistake-free. It's like Kirk Cousins, just not flashy, mistake-free.
You're making great points, and like I said, I'm trying to be a little bit of a wild card here. And I love the player. Let me elaborate a little bit. That I think that you touched on it. It's for him, the bar is so high in my mind. Okay, like I have seen that guy do things I've never seen a safety do on a football field. I literally have watched that guy do things that I didn't know a safety could do. Okay, that's how high the bar is. So it's just a slight decline from that is all I'm talking about. I'm not saying he's a bad player.
I think it's a very fair point. And I think the lack of splash plays, which is what we expect from Harrison Smith, is part of the reason it can be a reason to be down on him a little bit. Now, I will say when I go through and watch the games, the primary thing I'm looking for is, who made this play good, or like who made a good play on this play, or who made a bad play on this play, right? Who's the reason that we had a coverage bust and we let up a bunch of yards, right? And Harrison Smith has not really been shown up very often on either side of that equation, which for a safety, honestly, is a good thing. We're used to him making all the splash plays, but he doesn't need to do that to be a good safety. And I think I agree with Nick's point there, but I think it's good to bring up because it's different from what we've seen in years past.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying. And I'm just trying to keep this thing hot. You know what I mean?
No, that's a good take.
I love Harry. I'm glad we signed him. All is well. All right. Let's those are good. Those were good, you guys. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the most underrated football player on the Minnesota Vikings this year. Nick, go.
Underrated is interesting because I feel like there's 2 boxes here. There's those who are Vikings fans who pay pretty close attention. And I would say you could go a lot of different directions here. I really think Everson Griffin has been extremely impressive as a pass rusher. He's already won the job. So I think he's done a lot of good things. I think Anthony Barr and Garrett Bradbury both probably get a little bit more hate than they deserve. And just because they do things that I think go underappreciated. But the first guy that pops into my mind in terms of underrated, I think among Vikings fans is probably Patrick Peterson. I think he's played at a Pro Bowl caliber level in coverage this year. I think he's been extremely good at facing up against some really good wide receivers and making very few mistakes. I think he's given up 1 touchdown on the year, and it was when Kyler Murray scrambled out of the pocket and he was forced to cover DeAndre Hopkins for 5 seconds. I think any cornerback is going to struggle covering DeAndre Hopkins for 5 seconds in the red zone. So other than that, he's had a lot of really impressive plays. They haven't asked him to go into the slot where he had trouble last year in Arizona. He's having a big bounce back year. So I think that's who I would go with in terms of Vikings fans. In the general media, though, I have to say, I think
ever the lawyer.
Kirk Cousins remains the most underrated player on this Vikings. He's there's only one quarterback starting quarterback with a higher grade than Kirk Cousins right now. Tom Brady. That's it.
Okay.
It's not, forget about Kyler Murray, forget about whoever. It's Kirk, and he's playing at an elite level right now, just mistake-free. He's got 2 interceptions. One of them was a bounced off KJ Osborne's hands, I think. He doesn't have the fumble problem. He's solved his pocket presence issues. He's not fumbling the ball. He's just continuing to deliver accurate on-ball throws on time. His statistics rank among the best in the NFL across every category, and yet everybody in the NFL is like, oh yeah, but it's Kirk Cousins, so he's probably the 20th best quarterback. No, he's playing like a top 5 quarterback right now. He should be in the MVP conversation. That's my mic.
There's your clip. We were looking for that. Matt.
Yeah, so I don't know how I can follow that one up, but
follow it. Go ahead.
But we got one name Nick mentioned popped out to me. I think Garrett Bradbury is a good answer, but the answer I'm going to go with is Dalvin Tomlinson. That's something that Nick brought up earlier in the broadcast, right, with our best position group in terms of the defensive tackles. And Dalvin's been a big part of that. Pierce kind of showed out with the 2 flashy sacks in game 1. Obviously, he's dealt with injuries and hasn't played as much. If he had been playing the whole season, it might be him, right? But Dalvin consistently, and I think the key with the defensive tackles is the number one thing is we're not allowing push in the run game. We're not allowing significant push in the run game. And that's something that goes underrated, right? We don't have quite the penetrators like an Aaron Donald or something who's going to make splash plays in the backfield, but it has allowed Kendricks to run free, and it's allowed our linebackers to look very good throughout the entire course of the season, no matter who's in there. And I really think that has helped significantly. And then he turned up the pass rush a little bit in this past game, and I think he got 1.5 or 2 sacks or something like that. One was discarded because he got a roughing the passer. I think he came up around Sam Darnold's face mask, which is it's kind of a random event that happens, and you're not allowed to get your hands that high, but it's really hard to ask pass rushers to avoid doing that. So I don't really hold it against them too much. I think he's been a stalwart. I think he's been worth the money that we paid him. And, it's a position that doesn't get talked about a lot because it doesn't have a lot of production.
Yeah, fair enough. For me, the answer is it's got to be Pat Peterson. I think that I severely underrated him coming into the year. I doubted that he would be able to be much of a contributor at all, and he's been pretty much the centerpiece of that backfield. So I got to agree with Nick on that part of his point.
I think it'd be interesting. This wasn't on our list, but I think if you asked, comeback player of the year, there's a few different directions you could go between Patrick Peterson bouncing back after a real down year in Arizona, Everson Griffin looking like he was about to retire and then coming back and winning back the starting job and having a lot of really high quality production as a pass rusher, and Danielle Hunter looking like he never missed a snap after having a season ending neck injury, which a lot of guys don't return back 100% from those. So a lot of guys haven't bounced back use.
Regarding Kirk, those rankings will come with wins, I think is the biggest problem there. I think that's what's really holding him
QB
back.
wins, baby.
They drive the conversation.
They drive the conversation. When Pat Mahomes is losing, everybody wants to cut his head off. I mean, that's
everybody
just the
thinks
reality.
He's bad now, which I don't understand.
It's insanity. It's insanity. And we're not even going to get into it on this show, but it's just, that's the kind of conversation that starts when you lose. So if you win, it goes the other way. And I think that would follow for Kirk. But anyway, okay. This was fantastic. This was really fun, you guys. I enjoyed. We weren't sure how this was going to work, I think, right? And I think this was pretty fun.
We did not share notes beforehand.
So. No, this is all off the cuff.
Live reactions.
Absolutely. This is how we do it here, off the cuff. Cool. All right, let's talk a little bit about week 8. We're back to football. We get to watch the boys again. We've got a huge Sunday night football matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, the mighty Dallas Cowboys. They're playing a hell of a high level of football this year. Probably our biggest test to date. Do you guys agree?
It's close.
Certainly.
Okay. But they are like, these next 4 games are as tough a games as we'll have.
Yeah, so we talked about that a lot. So. Yeah.
So Arizona's probably higher, but we didn't know it at the time. So.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, going into it, it feels like I feel like they're a better team than I felt Arizona was going in, but Arizona's now 7-0. So it's like,
yeah, that's true. Wins talk, right? Okay, let's talk about the offense that the Cowboys have a little bit. The rushing attack is still their thing. They still do it at a very high level. Now they have 2 running backs instead of just one. Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard. Have you guys had a chance to watch much Cowboys this year?
I end up watching a ton of Cowboys, honestly, just because they're the 4:30 game or whatever, and they're always on TV. So it's like, that's just what you're going to watch because they're there. But they've been awesome on offense. I mean, they're truly incredible. They're up there. You could pick nits about who you want to be. There's a bunch of good offensive teams, but they're in the conversation for best offense in the NFL. I think if you look at the entirety of their offense, Zeke as a running back isn't maybe as explosive as he initially was, but he always falls forward. He is like insane in terms of the forward lean he has on his runs, and will always fight for extra yards after contact. Tony Pollard is the explosive element in their running game. Their offensive line has blocked awesome. They might have the best offensive line in the league so far this year. Their run blocking's been great. It sounds like Terrence Steele is still going to start at right tackle. Lyle Collins was suspended for 5 games, and it sounds like he's in the doghouse a little bit, so he's not going to come back and start right away. The interior, well, the left side of the interior, right? Zach Martin is lights out, like the best guard in football. But like Connor Williams and Tyler Biadasz, their center, Connor Williams is a left guard, are a little bit of a weakness there, but that's about it, because Tyron Smith looks really good again. He suffered injuries for a long time, but he's back kind of to a top level form. Yeah. On the wide receiver group, Gallup is hurt, but Amari and CD have been playing lights out. I actually think Gallup being hurt has done a little bit of good for them, because
I totally agree.
Last year with their wide receivers, they were very static. It was always Amari to one side, Gallup is the X to the other side. So Amari the Z, Gallup the X, and CD the slot. And they're just like, all right, guys, line up and win. And now they've been having a lot more interest in play calling, getting guys open on the field, downfield. And Dak's been distributing at a super high level. Like, he's processing the game out of this.
Prescott, I think, has taken a step this year. And that's pretty crazy to say, because he was probably, in many people's eyes, a top 10 quarterback last year. He is playing really well. Like, I've been amazed by him, honestly. And I've been a doubter pretty much every year. Like, just like, I don't know about this Dak guy. I think he's good. This year, it's all that's gone. I'm totally impressed by him.
He's right up there in the MVP conversation with Kirk Cousins, I would say.
There we go. But no, seriously, Dak is processing the game at like a snap decision, get the ball out, know exactly where it needs to go before it needs to go on a like extremely high level, like approaching Tom Brady, Drew Brees, like whatever nonsense, like ridiculously good quarterback you want to talk about.
They have that posture as an offense. It's a posture I really love, where it's like you get the sense that they want to kill you deep every fucking chance they get. Like, they're constantly looking for the deep ball. Mm-hmm. And I love that in an offense. Just that like, if we can attack you, we are. Even if the ball is going to sail out of bounds or we're still going to challenge you, make you work all day to defend that deep ball. And they're pretty scary, man. Let's talk about the defense a little bit. Defensively, they are giving up a lot of yardage through the air. Okay. But they have a top 5 rushing defense. So kind of a weird dichotomy there. And they're also really opportunistic, right? They get a lot of turnovers. Talk to me about the defense. Nick, what's your impression been of the Cowboys defense so far this year?
I don't think they're necessarily like terrible. And I think going into the season, I would have predicted them to be a bottom 5 defense, just because of, I think I have a lot of questions about their secondary. And I have, other than they've got some, it's like, it's Gregory and it's, I don't know, not a lot of other guys, but then Trayvon Diggs kind of exploded. And, but he's, Trayvon Diggs is like very boomer bust. Like, he'll either have a pick 6 or he'll give up a 70-yard touchdown.
He'll be trailing behind someone. Yeah.
So, and not in like, sometimes people are gamblers in good ways. I think he's a gambler in a bad way. So, but still, like, bad gamblers will still occasionally win. And when they win, he's leading the league in interceptions. He's
been hot this year.
Yeah,
he's been hot.
So, I mean, I think they're probably not as good as their defensive efficiency metrics would suggest, just because I don't think they're going to continue to rack up that many turnovers. So I do think it's an interesting matchup on both sides of the ball. I think this is probably a playoff caliber offense, certainly one of the best offenses we're going to play all year. So it'll really be a really strong top matchup for the defense, and see how good this defense actually is. But this defense has looked incredible against, Sam Darnold or, other low tier quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see them go up against these, Amari Cooper, one of the best route runners in the NFL. CeeDee Lamb up there with Justin Jefferson as the best young wide receiver in the NFL. Zeke Elliott, who I think is still probably, when healthy, one of the best running backs in the NFL. So, and a top tier offensive line with 2 All-Pros on it. So that's a really tough matchup. Defensively, I'm not sure they have the same kind of horses in the stable. So I anticipate this being a little bit of a high scoring matchup. And I think the big question for me will be, I know that the Cowboys can stay on schedule and not let drives stall. I think the Vikings offense can be very hot or cold, where they'll score quickly, or they'll get into a rut where they go 3 and out, or they don't put up any touchdowns in the second half. Mm-hmm. So I think the big question will be, will the Vikings offense be able to keep pace?
Matt, do you have anything to add on the Cowboys defense?
Yeah, on their defense, I think Randy Gregory is actually playing at a really high level. And DeMarcus Lawrence has been injured. If you told me before the season that DeMarcus Lawrence was injured and
write him off,
Jalen Smith was bad, they cut Jalen Smith, right?
Yeah,
I would have been like,
crazy.
This defense is going to be
that is crazy,
horrifying.
It was a bad defense, and they lost their best player.
Yeah, exactly. But Randy Gregory has been playing awesome. He made the Patriots right tackle look absolutely foolish on a couple of reps. 2 weeks ago, I guess, was the last time they played as well. And Trayvon Diggs, for all the gambling, like you said, Nick, I mean, it's been hitting, right? Like, he's been winning his bets. So that's why he has 7 interceptions. He's got 2 returned for touchdowns. That's a huge, impactful changing of the game. I think one of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about with our passing offense is Kirk ends up a little bit predictable. Like, we do end up a little bit predictable as an offense sometimes. I think you see that with the batted balls that Kirk has, where, like, if we're playing quick game and we're going to get the ball out, Kirk knows where he wants to go pre-snap. But I think the defense also kind of has a feel for that sometimes, right? So if we get a quick play, like I remember against the Eagles, I think that was a Monday night game or something, so you guys probably saw it, his pick 6 of Jalen Hurts, like, if we have a quick route that he's able to read and jump, that could be frightening. Now, we can also take advantage of him deep, I think, in some instances. So I think that matchup might change the outcome of the game, because if we're able to take advantage of him making mistakes, then that would give us a huge win in the game. But if we make a mistake in his direction, that's going to be a problem too.
The Diggs family wants to beat us on Sunday Night Football too. So
Jaron Curse probably wants to beat us too.
Jaron Curse definitely. He's actually
game.
playing really well. We didn't get a chance to talk about him, but he's been a starter for the Cowboys. Let him walk right out the door. Guys, this was fantastic. I think this went even better than we expected, and I think it's time to wrap things up with 15 seconds of fantasy. Are you ready? All right. We are all in a fantasy league together. We know that you, our listeners, don't want to hear us talk about our fantasy teams, but we desperately want to speak about them. So every week we dedicate 15 seconds of our podcast to fantasy football talk. Nick, you have 5 seconds. Matt, you have 5 seconds. Starting now. Go, Nick.
I'm 7-0, number 1 in points scored. The next best team is 4-3. So
Matt, go.
Lost last week, but I'm past my major buys, so we're looking good going forward.
I am rising. All right, boys, this was a really good time. Thank you for joining. Joining together as a group. Group hug. Any final words? Nick,
on that note, goodbye, I love you.
Goodbye, I love you. There we go. Wonderful. You can find me on Twitter.
We didn't do any promotions. Sorry.
Where can you find Nick?
We're not done yet.
At Nick Olson NFL. You'll find my KJ Osborne article tweeted there if you want to read up more about why he's good.
And you can follow me on Instagram at You've Been Gregg. That's where I post my internet life. Also on Twitter, but find me on
We are
Instagram. Kindred
Skulls. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts.
Absolutely. You guys are stealing all my stuff. All right. And
we are co-hosts.
We are co-hosts. That's true. But I have to do something. Okay. And also, please don't forget to check out, we did a Sunday morning live stream last week, and we did a really fun talk about the team, and you got a couple of good rants from me on that episode. So check it out. That's on our YouTube. You can find it by searching Kindred Skulls on YouTube. Now we're out.
Some great film breakdowns on the YouTube channel too.
Absolutely.
So if you like the
we put
podcast,
up a
definitely
couple
check
of
those
those.
out.
I need to get some highlight tapes together. I was thinking of doing both Kendricks and Hunter, but that's still in the works. So
I love it. Get it out there, man. All right. Final words. I'm going to give you another hug.
there we go.
Weird.
Goodbye. I love you.
I can't get like
I love you.
that high
I love
from
you.
my camera, so it just looks weird. All right.
We've sufficiently made our listeners uncomfortable.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
First round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind, and we'll score.